Hello. Welcome again. I wanted to talk a little bit today about a few different things. One of them was the way I start every class. And I've done it this way for a long time, and it works out really well. So usually the first few, I might have a class where it's six weeks or 6 sessions, I should say, 6 classes, 1 a week. And usually the first class, what I'll do is I'll tell people, the tarot cards are 78 cards. So that means you have 78 different meanings on those cards. And then you have reverse meanings. And reverse meanings are another 78 meanings. And I have 156 meanings, the cards. And some places will tell you, take a card a day and learn that card. It will take forever to learn the card. You're not going to get anything done like that. So with my classes, I don't use reverse meanings, so we're back down to 78. I never did. And I also don't use the suits of the minor arcana. So you have the suits of swords, pentacles, wands, and cups. You have 4 aces, 1 of each, 4 kings, 1 of each, and 56 cards, ace through 10, 4 court cards. But I don't use the suit. So all aces are the same thing. All 10s are the same thing. Pages, kings, 7s, they're all common within the suit. The numerical value is common regardless of the suit. If you want to spice it up a little bit and fine tune it, yeah, you could throw the suit in there if you want. But to me, the 4 suits are just the 4 basic functions of consciousness based on Carl Jung and maybe some others. I'm not too sure. The 4 basic functions of consciousness are thought, emotion, your spirit, and your material physical world. And so thoughts, I look at it with swords, are your thinking. Cups are your emotion. Your spirit is what inspires you, what's in your soul. That's your spirit. That's the wands. And then the pentacles is your physical world, material world. And no matter what you're looking into, really anything you're doing, those 4 suits are affected. Those 4 functions of consciousness are affected in everything you do. So if you think, well, okay, I start a new relationship, well, that would be cups, emotions, but that also affects your thinking, swords, and it also affects your spirit, your inspirations, your wands, and it affects your physical world, the pentacles. So it's not just cups. Anything you're doing, it's all 4 suits get affected. I never really saw a need for the suits. And when I first started reading, a lot of the readers were just using the 22 major arcana anyway. They weren't even using the minors. And they also weren't using reverse meanings. So just 22 cards. So you can get a lot done with what I'm doing with that. And a lot of people that I've taught have gone on to become professional, and I still know them, and we're close friends now. And my teachings, the way I teach is, if you want to fine tune it from there, you can without having to relearn anything. So later on, let's say you want to use the suits, or you want to use reverse meanings, where you could take what you've learned with me, and you can go further with that and fine tuning it in your own special little ways. But what I like to do is I like to get people getting involved with actually doing readings. And so you have the suits are common with me. That's 14. So you have 14 meanings for the minor arcana, ace through 10, and 4 court cards. And then you have the 22 majors. So that's 36 meanings. And I also use keywords instead of 3 or 4 sentence definitions, which allows you to drift off into something, meaning something that you thinks it, how you see it. A keyword allows you to drift off into other meanings that I would never even know. It allows you to read the cards through your eyes instead of looking at it through mine. And it works out very well. Also, what I teach in my classes is why the tarot works. So I like to go into the card spreads and explaining what a card spread is doing. And understanding why it works really opens up a whole understanding of what it is you're doing. Now you know what you're doing because you know why it works. So I think it really has a lot of there's a lot of advantage of knowing that. What that allows you to do is customize or fine-tune readings to do them the way you want to do them. Well, we never understood why the tarot worked before. For centuries, we never understood why. So with that, what you're left with is only the going through mimicking what needs to be done with it. So in other words, we do this step, and we don't ever veer away from it because we don't understand why we're doing what we're doing. But once you understand what it is you're doing, it allows you to fine tune it and adjust it in ways that are more effective in a reading. The tarot today can be seen as a creative thinking technique. And that's what it would be explained as if you talk to somebody in psychology. You could actually take college courses on creative thinking techniques today. And if you go into one of the most basic creative thinking techniques we know of is called conceptual blending. Conceptual blending is a way the mind naturally works anyway. And conceptual blending is identical to a tarot card reading. And the way conceptual blending works is you add something random, a randomness of some type, to elements of your question. And then you make associations between this randomness and the element of the question you're looking at. What attributes does this randomness have that could help be useful for this section or element of my question? A card spread is your question broken apart into sections. Each position of a card spread is meant to represent an important aspect of your question. Now, if we don't understand what it is we're doing, we use template card spreads. You know, the Celtic cross or the horseshoe spread, the horoscope spread, and you're told what each position means. But once you understand that a card spread is your question fragmented, broken apart into elements to look into specifically, this allows you to realize that you could change those position meanings to something more with more purpose to it, something that would be more substantial in your readings. But first, you have to understand why it works to do that. So if any of you seen my Celtic cross, you'll see where I've done that. And a lot of people think my Celtic cross is better than your traditional Celtic cross. I do. And a lot of people feel that way. My work on this subject is the first of its kind. I'm the only one that's ever seen or been able to explain with anything conclusive on why the tarot works. But it's a real advantage to know that. And my books go into that as well. The mystery of the tarot has never been in the cards. It's been in their application. And the application today would be defined as a creative thinking technique known as conceptual blending. What you do with conceptual blending is you're taking a randomness of any kind, anything at all, and you're adding it to an element of your question. This randomness can come from anywhere. It can come from randomly selecting a word in a page of a book. And that word, how does that word be associated with this element of my question? This forces what happens with your thinking. If you're stuck on an issue, you've gone through everything you know, everything in your mind, and you say, I don't have an answer for this. And so you're stuck then. And your mind will loop in all these dead ends where there's no answer. So now we have to look somewhere else. And what conceptual blending does is we take a randomness of some type and we add it to our question. And then we metaphorically or some other way associate this randomness to the element of the question. And how can this help us? And this forces us out of our regular thinking into using our imagination to make associations between these two things. And this also allows us to come up with new ideas about what we're looking into. And if you're forced to use your imagination, I'm convinced that that's the same part of your mind that your intuition comes from. But we don't know anything about intuition yet, except for it's there. But we do know we can find new ideas to questions we're looking into with what's now is called the creative thinking technique, specifically the most popular one, and it's known as conceptual blending. Adding a random stimulus to elements of our question is the same thing we're doing when we add a random tarot card to an element of a card spread, known as a position. Positions of a card spread are elements of your question. The random stimulus that's placed there is a tarot card. And then associations are made between the tarot card's meaning and how we interpret it to that element of the question it's placed with. That's undeniably conceptual blending. Now, tarot cards have been around for centuries, but this creative thinking technique is fairly new as far as being recognized officially in psychology. It didn't become a official term in psychology until 1993. So it's fairly new. But what this allows us to do is to sit down with a question we don't have an answer to. Find answers we never even thought of before with this application. And if they've worked, if those answers work, we've made an accurate prediction. Now, when you're using a deck of tarot cards, you don't have an answer to a question. You do this, you apply this application called the tarot card reading, and we find answers. And if those answers work and it becomes successful, then that's an accurate prediction. And it's a very strong illusion to think that these cards showed us that. No, the cards didn't show us this. The cards were a tool. The application allowed us to find new answers. And that's what we've done. Throughout history, there's all sorts of examples of conceptual blending by genius minds and other people. Adding a random stimulus of some type to elements of our question and making associations between that randomness and the element of the question. Leonardo da Vinci once was trying to figure out how sound traveled. And he was standing by a pond of water early morning one day, thinking about this question: how does sound travel? And as he's thinking about it, he hears the church bells off in the distance. And he took a pebble and he threw it in the water. And he's watching the ripples come from that pebble. And he sees the waves. And he's listening to the church bells. And he thought, sound travels in waves. Now, a pond has nothing to do with sound and how it travels, but that's what he figured out. He wasn't able to prove it, but he was right. One common story I talk about with conceptual blending is Louis Braille. There's a pine cone here. Louis Braille became blind at a very young age. And so one day he's sitting under a tree. He's blind now. And he's in the backyard. His father's working in the yard. He's just sitting under a tree, wishing he could read a book again. And as he's thinking about this, he just feels around. He picks up a pine cone. And he's touching this pine cone. He's feeling this pine cone. He's thinking about, I wish I could read a book. And he feels the points on the pine cone. And he thought, well, what if they took points and put them on paper in certain patterns that you could touch that would signify certain letters of an alphabet? And that's how he came up with Braille, by Louis Braille. Now, if you look at a pine cone rationally, logically, and you say, okay, what would help the blind to be able to read? How about this pine cone? Well, that doesn't make any sense. But to add something random to your subject, to your answer, your question, and having an open mind, and how can this help me find an answer to this, forces us to see things that we never saw before. Lots of times by nobody. Conceptual blending. Adding a random stimulus to elements of your question allows you to find new ideas. Adding a random tarot card to elements of your question known as card spread positions is identical to the same application. And that's what we're doing. My next Zoom meeting is July 13th, 12 o'clock Chicago time. You go to tarotmaps.com down below. And hope I see you there. Thanks for watching. Keep throwing cards.